welcome to another episode of Side Part. I'm Nikki, your host, and today I have Erin back on the podcast. I'm just so excited to have her back. And today we're going to talk about a book instead of talking about who we are as people. We'll probably still end up talking about that too. But today we're talking about one of my favorite reads this year. We're talking about Quicksilver by Callie Hart. And I know Erin loved it just as much as I did. So I can't wait to dive in. We're going to structure this episode with a brief, non-spoiler thoughts, review, whatever you want to call it in the beginning. And then we're going to move into just spoiler, chaotic, just thoughts on the book, not necessarily in a linear order, but we're going to get to the end somehow because I think that needs a lot of unpacking.
Yes.
Erin, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited. When you reached out to me, I think it was maybe a month ago, to come on, and we were both reading Quicksilver. I was so excited. And I will say there was no audiobook for Quicksilver. So when I committed to reading it, I did not know that. But I read through, and I'm so excited to talk about this. I did love it, and I can't wait to dive in.
You know, I kind of ran into a similar roadblock. Like, not that I typically read audiobooks, but this month was just so hard for me to even pick up a book. And somehow I was still able to finish it. It still gripped me. It still got me heavily invested when I had no space in my brain to even want to read. So if that's saying something, I mean, that I guess it's a testament to how good of a book it was. But
yeah,
what were kind of your thoughts on it? Like, just like a brief, I don't know. What did you love about it?
I feel like lately my brain has been kind of on repeat with fantasy. You know, we see the same kind of patterns, which is, you know, you get used to it and it's great. But it had aspects of that. It had the familiarity that we love. It had the world, but it also was so different. The magic system was completely different. You know, the love story was paced very differently than a lot of the ones that I've read recently. And so it just felt very unique, and it pulled me in, which lately that's been hard to do because I do feel like a lot of the stories I've read lately are very similar. So this one really captivated me. I mean, from the start, it starts off very quick and very fast paced.
Yeah, I think like the opening scene, I was just like, oh, wow, this is awesome. But you hit the nail on the head. There is like this familiar aspect to it, like in the sense of there's certain things a fantasy novel needs to make it great. Right? There needs to be some sort of adversity that they're facing. There needs to be a magic and some sort of, I don't know, bad guy. I feel like if there's no bad guy, like, what are we even doing here?
Right. What are we fighting for?
Yeah. What are we really fighting for? So there was like that epic fantasy feel, but the way that the author wrote it and like the way she kind of portrayed these different magical creatures, I felt like it was just such a cool way to kind of conceptualize them. And we'll dive more into that in the spoilery section. I think my favorite thing though was that she truly wrote a morally gray character. Like usually the morally gray characters, in quotes, I love them from the beginning. Like I never hate them. They're just awesome, right? You're like, oh, I'm already in love.
They're dark, but you love them right away. Resand right away, you know?
Yeah, 100%. Now, I will say the main character, Kingfisher in the story, no. And that's all I'll say on that. Let's dive into the spoiler section because I feel like I need to unpack that a little bit.
Yes, I agree. And I think I even messaged you. I was, you know, maybe 25% of the way through. And I was like, I don't know if I'm alone in this, but I am not connecting to this male main character at all. I'm not a fan. He is rude. He was even a little bit disrespectful at first. You know, some of the lines, I was like, ooh, you know, take a step back, buddy. And I think you felt the same way.
Yeah. Well, and in his defense, Cyrus was like meeting him for everything he said. She gave it right back, and she made it worse in most instances. They're like, oh my God, this is getting worse. This is getting worse. Like she had no fear, which is what I think I loved about her from the beginning was that she's like, okay, cool. You could decimate me in a second. You're Fae. I'm not. I don't care. Like I've lived through worse conditions than this. You're not going to scare me.
Yeah, and I think that's where it comes from her, is that she has survived. You know, she's a fighter. She's lived in this horrible, almost kind of dystopian was the feel I got from their world, where she's fighting to survive. She's fighting for her little brother and the people she loves. And she's like, I have nothing left to lose. You know, I've been doing this my whole life. Bring it on. And I did love that about her.
Well, and like, let's set the stage, right? Where like the opening scene, there's like these gilded guards in this very desert, like the sun never sets, like everyone's thirsty climate. And she's just like robbing a guard, and it's like high stakes from the very beginning. And it's just like event after event after event. Never in a million years did I think they're going to leave that world and go to another one.
Exactly.
I just felt like the story just kept going. It never felt like there was a lull. I never felt like a chapter was unnecessary. But I say,
totally agree.
I really was rooting for Carrion to be the male. Like, we meet him before Kingfisher. And
I love Carrion so much. I was chatting, you know, because I posted last night that I finished it. And of course, people are chatting. I was like, I hope that we have like a Cassian situation where Carrion ends up getting his own book, or it becomes more of a role. Because
I would love for him to be the second book. Yes.
Yes. He was his humor, his, you know, little drops where it's like a completely serious situation, and then he throws something in there that's, you know, like when he brings the plant home, like it was just the cutest, most amazing, like able to connect with him kind of things.
Yes. And like, also though, he takes no BS.
Exactly.
Which I also love. So I feel like he never got pushed around by Cyrus, but at the same time, I don't know. You meet him in that like pub brothel place in the beginning, and I'm like, I love this guy. He's a total jerk, but I love him. And so like, that's why I immediately went to like, he's going to be the male main character, right? Because we're enamored from the beginning, but he obviously has this dark side. They already had this like, you know, brief connection, and I couldn't have been more wrong.
Well, I thought there might have been a little love triangle situation with them going on.
I'm actually happy there wasn't.
Didn't happen, but
yeah, you know, I really thought that was going to happen, but she shut him down like immediately every time.
Yeah, it was more of like old friends who happened to have like, you know, been romantic at one point for, you know, 2 or 3 nights, and then they after that realized like, oh, we're meant to just be friends. Like, it was very platonic kind of vibes from them, which I actually loved. You know, it was like, oh, more joking, you know, playing off of each other a little bit. Whereas at the beginning, her and Kingfisher were very much more serious, you know, kind of that antagonistic conversation. So Carrion definitely brought in a little bit more fun.
Yeah. And the minute he admitted that like he got the boots, but like in exchange, Kingfisher asked him to take a bath. I'm going to be honest. At that moment, I was like, I knew it was going to be like some sort of mate situation. So we didn't know if mates were a thing in this world at that point. I don't think it was like not something that was talked about yet.
Right.
But I was like, oh, okay, well, now that's where this is going. But I didn't really like Kingfisher at that point. So I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. I don't even think I really liked Kingfisher until he had that admission of, you know, I had to push you away for your safety, for the safety of the world, all of that. And then you know, and that's why I was telling someone last night, I kind of want to reread this book, because I think there were a lot of Easter eggs that you would know now that you didn't know at first. And I want to go back and read those, which is rare for me. I rarely will go back and reread.
Well, when he talks about like the meaning behind the name he gave her from the beginning, I think it's like Osha,
little Osha. Yes.
And then he talks about like the story behind that butterfly. It's not just because they're breakable, but like the way that they bloom and how beautiful they are and how they deserve to be protected. And like all these pieces that came forth. I'm like, what else did I miss in this dang book?
I know. It's like the cover makes so much more sense now with the butterflies.
I know.
It's like, what
it's like
this?
Silvery, milky tear in these butterflies. You're like, what is going on?
Yes. But yeah, I think that the Quicksilver in itself was such a unique magic system. The way that it was like sentient and called to her was so unique. In, you know, other fantasy books that we've read recently is more like your power is just kind of one with you. But this, it was like her power, she was drawing from every piece of Quicksilver there was and connecting with these, you know, the people or whoever it was behind the relics. And I thought that was so unique and so captivating and just a different vibe than what we're used to.
That is so interesting. Well, and even how the Quicksilver, when she was captured by one of like I forget his name, but like Madra's captain, and she's taken to like that hall, and she senses like the stilled pool of Quicksilver to her left, right, with the sword in it.
Yep.
And I don't know, I'm gonna be honest, I was like, I don't get like what, this is confusing to me. And even like how she opened it didn't make sense to me till later in the book. Like it was kind of very murky, but
Yes.
I don't understand. So was Kingfisher he was in the labyrinth, and then all of a sudden the Quicksilver just liquefied and he's like, all right, going in. Like that was it.
I think so. And then he just popped up on the other side and grabbed her and then came back. That part I also was a little bit murky
but it makes
about.
so much sense why he was so jaded and traumatized and like in the worst headspace when he had her. And then he also gave her his relic to get through the Quicksilver.
Right.
And so not only did he go through hell for like, it was like 100 and something years, and then he saves her and then like gets reinfected, or if you will, from the Quicksilver. Like,
right.
I feel like I didn't give him enough credit in the beginning. I
didn't give him enough credit at all, and I feel guilty now, of course.
Yeah, like he meets his mate, is traumatized.
Right. I'm like, you've been through it, buddy. Like, good for you. And she even says, like, he looks like death. Like, he is death. That was how he was first described. And of course, you know, he has shadows, and we all knew he was going to be a shadow daddy from the beginning. I just was shocked that I didn't like him, because I usually love the shadowy guys, you know, but I did end up loving him after they have the tattoos, which obviously I'm a huge fan of. And the whole mating conversation really just brought it all together. And it was probably the last 20%, like up till then, you didn't really know all of his secrets. You know, the last 20% was paced so well. I thought, like, so much better than a lot of recent books I've read. Yes.
And I felt like, how do I say this? The author wrapped it up enough where I didn't feel like I was dying for book 2, but I can't wait to read book 2.
Yes.
Like, I think it's going to be so well done. I'm excited, because the idea of her being like a vampire queen, like, okay, let's talk about that.
Yes.
The way she connected fae and vampires, like, it was a blood curse. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And we've read books with like vampires and fae. I'm thinking Lady of Darkness. I read that book, and they definitely had
that one yet.
Fae and vampires, but they were just separate. Like, they were just like all existing in the same supernatural world. And they had shifters too. But what I liked about this was, like, the vampires were fae. Or they could also be like
a hybrid situation.
And it was really well done. Like, I was oh, this is really cool.
It's like bringing my Vampire Diaries, the originals, fantasies to life. Like, I read it and I was like, this is my dream. Like, I love a hybrid situation. And the fact that, you know, again, bringing it back to how unique this book was in the ending, the fact that she, one, is more powerful than Kingfisher, at least that's kind of what I felt. That was what was hinting towards. She's going to be this queen that's all powerful, but now she's queen of vampires. It's not
in the army that Kingfisher and his like little, I don't want to call them the cadre, but they're
the crew. I don't know.
They have a name. I know they do. It's like the wolves, the Lupo something.
Right.
But they've been fighting them
exactly
forever,
so
and now she's in charge of them.
Mm-hmm.
So that threat's gone. Bellacon's gone.
Yeah.
So,
but like, are they going to accept her?
I think it's going to be Madra's going to be the main villain in book 2.
Yes. Also, can we talk about how every villain is named with an M? I feel just in every fantasy book, it's like Maeve, Malcolm in this one.
I want to name, if I have a girl, I'm like, I want to name my next child Maeve.
Maeve.
And I'm like, no, this was before I read the Lord of the Flies.
Like, probably no.
That book ruined the name Maeve for me.
Unless you want her to be evil.
Now I feel like if my child has like an M name, they're going to be like an evil
like
fantasy villain.
From Crescent City, you just M is off limits.
Apparently, Madra, Micah, Maeve. Who else? There has to be more. There has to be more.
But yeah, I feel like she's going to be the main villain, which that was a surprise too when they were all three sitting together at the end as well.
Can we talk about that triumvirate? I was not ready for that
No.
curveball. I thought Madra was going to be like a problem for book 2. It was mainly going to be like Malcolm and Bellicon that were going to be like the major foes in this book.
Right.
And all of a sudden she just like shows up. How'd she get there? The Quicksilver wasn't activated. Where did you come from?
Right. I was shocked. And then
Like,
also the God of Chaos situation, I loved. I loved that concept, like personifying these gods and then having it. The daughters caught me a little bit off guard, but like the God of Chaos himself, I was like, this is so cool. And I think so much could be done with it in the next books.
Yes, I especially loved that she faced him and had a conversation with him, because they talk so much in the beginning how they avoid his gaze, how they avoid his attention. And he's like, you have my full attention. Let's talk. And then he's like brought her back as something completely other. She's half vamp, half fae now.
Fae.
But I got the vibe she wasn't a full vampire. She could still eat food and live her life.
Right.
But
I think she's half.
The part I love the best is now she's not immortal, but will have a long lifespan.
Exactly. So now her and Kingfisher can be together. Although one part I thought was kind of strange and rushed, and maybe this was on purpose. But so this whole book, right, Kingfisher has been losing his mind without his relic. The Quicksilver's taking over. And then all of a sudden, it was like the last 10 pages. It was like, I'm being healed. Like,
it's all working now. The witch and the healer, or like Talena and whatever witch they brought in. They're like, yeah, they figured it out a little bit. We're kind of working on it, but I think it's gonna be fine. And you're just like,
I was like, okay. Cool.
I thought you were like rotting
along
from the inside out, but okay. So
yeah, so that part I was a little shocked for. It felt like almost in Crescent City when they found the antidote in like 2 pages. You know, after this whole thing, it was just very like, oh, okay.
Oh, you know, like this parasite that's been infecting everybody, and it's really difficult. It's made by the Asteri, these really like immortal, intensely intelligent beings. Yeah, we figured it out. We cracked the code. Here's one for everybody. We found a way to mass disseminate it. Here y'all go. Like,
right.
It was giving
it felt like that.
that energy. Like,
yeah. So but maybe there's a reason for it. Maybe it's setting something up. It is so strange for me, like coming into this fantasy world so late. I'm not used to just having one book. I'm not used to having to wait. And so having all these theories and not being able to know is very unfamiliar to me, and I don't like it.
Well,
like,
I
want to be able to just dive in.
I heard October, but possibly later. Like it could be delayed a little.
Of this year?
I think.
Oh my gosh, I hope so. Because like When the Moon Hatched, the second book isn't coming out until next October. And I was like, I literally cannot wait that long.
I literally cannot recall a single thing. It's fine. I actually feel like this is going to sound bad. Please don't judge me.
I'm ready.
I've been having a hard time with fantasy lately, unless I'm like in it from page 1.
I get it.
My life's been heavy on the other side over here, and it's like I need something that's going to take me away right away. I don't want to feel like I have to work. I don't want to have to get through the first 100 pages or the first 3 books, or I want to just enjoy it from the beginning. And so if I am talking about a fantasy book, I did finish it. Believe that I loved it, because I just, things have been feeling really heavy. Like, and I just can't let reading be one of those things. It just can't be, you know?
Oh, I get it. You have to listen. And, you know, I burned myself out on fantasy a while ago, and then I completely switched gears and did dark romance, like for months. I mean, Hunting Adeline, Butcher and Blackbird, all of those. And now that I'm back to fantasy, I'm like, oh, thank God I took a break, because I'm feeling it more and more engaged. I will say, reading this book, I'm really proud of myself because
there's no about that, because I know you're more of an audio listener. Like I'm not. I'm a Kindle girly through and through. Actually, audio's like hard for me. Like I have to listen at most at 1.2 speed. Like I take my time. But we're reading, I could read so fast. It's really relaxing to me. So
and how
did you get through it?
It was Mostly because of this deadline, which was good. I needed a push, but I have this bad habit to where I only really read before bed. If it's during the day, I do audiobooks because I'm doing chores or I'm cooking or I'm cleaning, and there's just not enough time between the shop and my 9 to 5 to sit down and read like for an extended period of time. So I only read before bed. And so my body now correlates sleep with reading. So literally anytime, regardless if it's 10 in the morning or 9 p.m., I fall asleep when I read. And so I'll be like out on the patio and all of a sudden I wake up and I'm like, my Kindle's in my hand. I'm like, it's 11 a.m. What am I doing? So it's a challenge mainly because of that, not because it wasn't captivating. My body just is not made for reading, apparently.
Well, this is going totally off topic, off the book. We will loop back around. But I have a hard time with people that like don't think different formats are as valuable or as like valid.
No,
and I just don't agree. I don't
anyone
agree.
who's tried to listen to an audiobook, it's hard. Like you have to train yourself to pay attention and engage because your mind can wander and then all of a sudden it's been 3 chapters and you vacuumed your whole house and you have no idea what happened. So I totally agree. I'm like, your brain is going regardless.
You're either like actively reading or you're actively listening, but both take time, intention, and comprehension.
Definitely.
Like, just because you're like reading with your ears instead of your eyes, but both are valid, in my opinion.
Right. And I can get through audiobooks just so much faster. It takes me so long to read an actual book. Like I'm listening to Spark of the Everflame right now, and I'm just flying through it.
How do you like it? I've heard good things, but I don't know if I'm going to
play. It's so good. It's also
really?
different. Yeah, it's also different than the normal fantasy. I know Lost Books of Jess is reading it right now, and I'm just, of course, loving her videos about it. But I'm only on book 2.
Has the best book recaps. Like
I know. I'm so
her
jealous
account.
you got to talk to her like face to face.
She's like the funniest, like kindest person ever. Like 100%. Anytime she ever wants to come on, I'm like, you can come on anytime you want to come chat. I'm here because you're the best. Yeah. But looping back, let's talk about Ren and Everlane, like Renfield and Everlane. What are your thoughts on them? Because I didn't love Everlane at the beginning.
I honestly don't even really remember Everlane at the beginning, which means that I probably didn't like her. She just wasn't very memorable to me.
I couldn't remember her name. I knew he had a sister, and I was like, I know he has a sister. What was her name again? I would have to like flip back.
Yeah. Yeah. So I didn't really remember her. She wasn't super memorable. Of course, then she gets kidnapped. And a lot of people last night when I was DMing about this book which I didn't even think about this. I'm not someone who thinks about like book theories and long-term theories. I'm just kind of vibing. But a lot of people were thinking that Everlane and Ren had some kind of relationship because of how Ren reacted when she was taken. It was more of like a mate, panic body reaction. He couldn't help it kind of thing. What did you think?
I thought, okay, so Renfield is like unflinchingly loyal to Kingfisher.
Yes.
And yet he sent, I think it's Lawrence, right?
Yeah.
And then Cyrus and Carrion, they all went through the Shadow Gate. And I don't think there would have been time for him to jump through anyway, but he was staying with Everlane. Right. He got her back. He wanted Kingfisher to get her back, and he got her back. And that's where he was going to stay.
Yes. Almost like he didn't have a choice. Like he was pulled. Yeah. So I could see that.
But at the same time, I thought it was wild that Cyrus like went after Kingfisher. I'm like, you are a human going into like a vamp world. No
I'm like,
magic.
Girl, you're like 20. What are you doing?
What are you thinking here? Like, and I'm all for like self-preservation, which does not exist in a fantasy novel. They're all martyrs willing to die for a cause, which is cool. But I remember, like, first of all, it was shady that he left her a letter and was like, yeah, I went into this without you.
I know.
Sorry, not
Especially,
sorry.
Like, that's your mate and you know it. Like, I get it. I see it both sides, definitely.
But I also think he didn't see a way he was getting out of that alive because they already had like the control over him because of that coin. Like, I don't think it was it a blood oath? It might have been.
I think so.
Yeah. And so the ending, like, let's
okay, wait, really quick before the coin is making me think of this. When they were in the labyrinth, I was picturing it as the maze from Goblet of Fire. I don't know.
Yes, especially with like all the monsters like jumping out, the way it would shift,
and the walls were changing.
Like, okay. Like so many, also even the beginning, like reminded me of like Star Wars, like this deserty, like, I don't know, like thieving, like they're all in like these like rafts. I don't know.
It's so funny how our brain like has all these little fantasy nodules that it pulls upon.
Yes,
I was like, is Cedric
labyrinth.
Diggory gonna like pop out? I don't know.
Oh my gosh, they're gonna like hit the port key, go like yeah. Voldemort's gonna be way on the other side. No, but I did think at the ending with like the labyrinth. Oh, you find out that he didn't sleep, didn't eat, and he was just stuck in there forever. And what? Okay, can we talk about like the weird sexual tension between Malcolm and Kingfisher? Like, what was that?
Yes. Okay. What was that? He was like my Kingfisher, and I was like, reading it to myself in this. I
just
weird,
want to drink you, or I want you to drink me, and it's like he kept being like, "Bro, strange. No." Denied you for like 100 years. You creep me out.
Yeah.
And I didn't know if it was like a bloodlust thing or like an actual sexual attraction. And not that I'm like anti anything that's like same-sex attraction, but it was so creepy.
And I'm wondering if it was like part of a sire bond a little bit. I mean, I know that he didn't sire him, but I wonder if maybe he bit him at one point and then that creates I forget. But they enthralled, not sired. Sired is vampire diaries.
Though. I think he literally plopped him in the labyrinth, and he's like, "I'll let you at any time if you come drink my blood." And he's like, "Yeah, no, dog, I'm good. I'm gonna look for this coin."
Yeah, it was very like kidnapper situation.
Yeah, like whenever you're ready, and he's just like, I don't know, but it's just so creepy. Like okay, have you read or watched Outlander?
No.
Okay, then I won't even bring up the reference. But there was like a scene in there that made me like just DNF the whole show. And that's what it was giving me that vibe of. And I don't know. I was like, what happened to this man? What did he do to you?
What's the backstory? Maybe we'll learn. Maybe there'll be a prequel situation.
But in terms of torture, it sounded pretty vanilla, like just your run-of-the-mill torture, just like in the labyrinth. Like, but I thought there was going to be some weird sadistic stuff going on there.
Right. He's like going with this weird spider monster guy. Good luck.
Okay, and then the twist with Carrion at the end.
Yes. Okay, which I'm so excited for because I feel like that means he's going to have a bigger story. And that also makes me want to reread it because there was so much of his story, like with his Nana, which I loved. I love a good Nana story, like a grandma bond.
A good Nana story.
Right when I knew I loved Carrion was when they were in the Fey world and Saris was like, why aren't you surprised by any of this? Like, why aren't you surprised that Fae are real? Up.
He was so comfortable.
And he was like, oh, my grandma told me. Like, why wouldn't I believe it? And I was like,
so cash.
Bro, I love you. Like,
yeah, he's just like, I'm quite at home here. Just been practicing the guards, and it's pretty chill.
And it all makes sense now. It's like, oh, okay, perfect.
Like she's like, oh, you have family and friends back in the Silver City, and he's like. In his head, he's like, yeah, they're only going to live another 80 years. I've been flying through these people every 80 for the last however long.
Yeah, and it also makes it make more sense why he is the way he is, like, in the pub and drinking and sleeping with a bunch of women. Like, he's just probably bored. He's been here for thousands of years. Everyone's dying that he loves. He's like, screw it. I can't tell anyone who I really am, so why bother forming a relationship? And it just made me love him that much more.
Well, and the fact that, like, I know Kingfisher promised to help Saris at one point, but it was Carrion. It was Can we just give Carrion the credit of helping the alchemist become the alchemist?
Yes.
He was like, have you just tried asking the Quicksilver to bond with something? And so casual, but she's like, well, no. And he's like, well, maybe do that. That's like,
yeah, and he was there with her, like in the forge every single time.
Yes. And so like he was like this constant silent presence was ultimately the reason she became what she was. And I want to give Kingfisher credit, but he kind of was like a hindrance in a lot of these situations. Like he
exactly. But I think it was because of the blood oath a little bit too. Like he physically could not tell her or help her,
I did not think about that with like the blood oath in terms of like,
I think
he might have been bound not to like, that's really interesting.
Yeah, I wonder if that's like he could not say certain things because of it, or help her succeed with getting the relics up because then that would, help defeat Malcolm. I don't know.
Well, and do you remember the one moment though where Malcolm's like, I'm going to have her, and he's like, you can't have her, she's mine. And this was before. I don't know. That was like the moment I think the tides turned a little bit for me. I was like, I like a good possessive MMC. All
exactly.
Right. Like,
Check.
I'm on board a little bit now. But there was also the moment where he didn't stop her from helping fight. I can't remember the name. It was like something with the D. Not the Darn. What's the Darn? I don't know.
The Darn is like the location, I think.
Okay. Whatever, like, the mindless feeders were called. I can't remember the exact name they used.
Right.
But when they were just like coming across like their foot soldiers, like, he didn't stop her. He just said like, but he also didn't just say like, I trust you to just be good on your own. Like, you like do these things. If I tell you to fall back, like, please listen, like, kind of thing.
Right.
And so when he stopped using their blood oath against her, that made me like him more too.
Exactly. And I think in future books, I think I'm going to start to like him even more because you can just tell their relationship is just starting. And I'm so excited for it to see, especially like how I hope he would be supportive of her being like a queen kind of above him. His name is Kingfisher, but he's not like a king. He's just...
this is going to be like a hot take. I hate his name.
I hate it too. It's like it reminds me, like, I'm like, are we...
I know. I like Fisher, but at the same time, like, I don't know, maybe there's more meaning behind it we just haven't gotten yet. And like, if that happens...
Right. Yeah.
But it just doesn't fit the vibe of like all the other names, in my opinion.
Right.
But it also, I'll probably love him eventually, like the name. But as of right now, it seems a little out of place to me.
Right. Like he might be from a different world or something. Okay. Also, the God of Chaos with the tree, that was like hard for me to picture with all these different universes.
This Inception stuff just starts getting to me, right? Like,
yes, it was Inception.
She's in the pool, but she's now in like a god realm, but like she's looking at the realms as like a tree that's like, I'm like, I like actually am just having a hard time here, like picturing worlds within worlds. And yeah, it gets me every time. My brain doesn't function that well in that respect.
But I love the end. I thought the last chapter was epic. Like I finished it and immediately was like, I have to talk to somebody about this, which I'm so glad I just finished yesterday because now I like got all of that out. But I was like on my DMs, I was like, you guys, what's going on? I like made a bracelet. Oh my gosh, Callie Hart liked my Instagram story.
I saw with my bracelet. That's awesome. That is. I was really like,
are we best friends? I think so.
I think we just became best friends.
Like everything, I want everything about alchemy lately. Like the Taylor Swift song, obviously, and then Alchemist. I love the idea of it.
I really thought it was a cool idea to have like a human, and like she didn't become Fae by anything other than like a supernatural intervention. Right. And I kind of like that she wasn't like a hidden Fae with these powers, but maybe like had some small amount of like Fae blood in her that was very diluted. Right.
Exactly. And she wasn't like the long lost heir that we've seen so often lately. Like it's always the long lost heir.
Like a princess that was found. Yeah.
Right. She won. She killed the guy and now the kingdom's hers. Like, I don't think I've read a book recently that had that where it's like she actually defeated and earned it rather than just being like the long lost heir.
Well, and I also love that Carrion was like, go ahead, drink my blood. And that's what weakened him being like some royal Fae poisonous dude to vampires. And then like he still was really strong and she still defeated him in the end. And now she's going to be the new vamp queen, which is wild.
My favorite. I'm such a vampire girly. Maybe not as much in books. I haven't read a lot of vampire books, but obviously Vampire Diaries, if you know me at all, is like my obsession. So I'm so excited for this.
Well, I love Vampire Diaries. I did love Twilight. I think Edward now to me is creepy as hell, but 17-year-old me.
Right. It was a vibe.
Big vamp fan. Big Edward fan. Yeah. I don't know. So a lot of his behavior is very problematic, but
yes, reading it, it's like watching Gilmore Girls as an adult. I'm like, Dean and all of them. I'm like, everything. How did I not notice this before? You know what I mean? Like toxic.
So toxic. Mm-hmm. Like Dean, I'm going to be honest.
Dean is the worst when you rewatch it as an adult.
I actually been rewatching it. I'm going to be honest. And it's been really rough. Yeah. Rory is so self-entitled.
Rory is the worst.
Ooh.
Rory is the worst. The only person I like in my rewatch is Jess. I'm such a Jess fan, even though he also kind of sucks.
Jess fan. Though he sucks in the way that was developmentally appropriate, right? Like a very traumatized teen. But like when he comes back around later on and he's just like, what the hell's wrong with you? Like, be an adult, get your shit together. I did. Look at all the stuff I've gone through. Like,
he is the real hero of the show. I'm starting my rewatch in early September. I do one every year. It's like the fall thing, of course.
Me too.
Millennial.
I'm in like a little early in my couch rotting season, but we're here. We're embracing it.
I think we've talked about this. Like, I usually love summer. Summer's my jam, but this year I'm ready. I'm ready for spooky. I'm ready for crisp air.
Yes, and it's 90 outside, and I'm like, I'm gonna wear a chunky sweater inside and just vibe.
Like, crank my AC up so that I can wear a blanket. Like, that's the level I'm at.
I know. I'm the same way. We are so bad. I need to sleep with the blanket on. So it's like we have to have our AC low at night.
Definitely.
But we are like not doing any favors to the energy grid. I can promise you that.
I'm with you.
Is there anything else that we forgot about the book? I feel like.
Okay, let me think.
I know. I'm like.
I did just want to circle back.
Book chat. I love this.
We talked about like everything, but I will say I loved I'm in like a very dystopian era right now of my reading and my TV watching journey, and I feel like the opening world of this book was dystopian, and I loved that so much, and I hope we get to see it again.
I miss like the Divergent era of the Hunger Games. Yes,
it was such a vibe. I love dystopian, like Maze Runner, all of those things. I hope it's making a comeback because I'm a very big fan.
But I think that's like what I loved was she incorporated like that dystopian vampire, but like still had the Fae element to
about everything, and
like
brought
all
it
my
together
favorite
in a
tropes.
way that didn't feel chaotic or messy.
No, it felt. That's the other thing. There's sometimes like fantasy series will start trying to like rope in every type of supernatural creature, and you're just like, I need a map of like what's what. But this didn't feel like that. It was very much. It felt clean. It felt believable. I mean, as much as
Yes, and like a very good book one. Like usually book one, like ACOTAR book one was obviously so good, but you can tell it's a book one. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would say. It's good if that's the first book you're reading, but then as you read the rest of the series, you're like, actually, it wasn't as good as I thought it was.
Like on a reread, you're like, did I love this? Like, but this book one like felt like a complete story, and it didn't feel like just a setup, which I loved.
Like honestly, if this book was a standalone, I'd be sad, but like you wouldn't feel that gaping hole of like, now what? I feel like she allowed. That's what I love so much about it. It felt complete, but now like, oh, what's next? Because now there's going to be a lot going on in book 2.
Yes, I'm so excited. I hope it comes out in October. We need to figure this out because I can't wait that much longer. October's pretty soon. Like, didn't Quicksilver just come out in June? That's pretty quick.
I could be wrong. I'm going to look at it. Let me look at Goodreads real quick.
Yeah.
What would it be called?
I don't even know what the series is called.
It's Fae and Alchemy, right?
Oh, yes.
So sometimes I wonder if I should be hosting a podcast with like my brain lately, because it's like I'm like, there's some podcasts they're so wonderful with like their notes and their detailed like theories,
like an
and I'm just like, oh, I like this too, and one more
it's
thing,
all over the place. I feel like that's more fun though, because I don't know. It's just how we read too.
I am who I am. I'm not gonna change.
I feel like it's easier this way. You're less likely to get burned out if you're just kind of flowing.
Yeah, that is so true, because I feel like sometimes we focus so heavily on production, especially like on Bookstagram and like creating, like being a content creator and general, not generator, but you're always just focusing on creating content, generating more content, getting more engagement. My engagement is in the gutter right now, but
same.
Sometimes you need to let it get there, because you have a life and you have people on the outside. And honestly, the podcast fills me up more right now than my Bookstagram, in the sense
you should listen to that,
because it's even fun. I love having real conversations with real people, and just having another creative outlet. And I will say, I love the people at my Bookstagram. That's not to say that that isn't something I still enjoy, but sometimes it does feel a little bit like work, like to try to always be creating. It can be
For
hard.
Sure. Yeah, I feel you.
You know what? I can't find it. I'll have to.
We'll have to figure it out because I can't wait much longer.
I'm sure someone's going to comment and be like, well, it's just coming out then. And you guys can't do a
well, let's hope it's
search.
October because that's like right around the corner.
Yeah. But I just really hope, and if you have gotten to this point in this episode, I really hope you do like love it as much as we did, because I think it's just such a special novel and it deserves a little bit more hype than it's getting.
I agree.
I think it's going to be one of the next, like, I don't know. Is there a word for like a figurehead fantasy series? I
don't know, but I think I agree. I think it's going to be, and I hope it gets the recognition it deserves. I know that Fantasy Fangirls hyped it up, which is great, and hopefully that'll keep the momentum going. But I'm so excited for book 2.
Well, I love ACOTAR. I love Fourth Wing, but sometimes it is nice to like hype up books that are not necessarily like getting as much traction.
Definitely.
You know?
Yeah.
Like One Dark Window. You should listen / read it.
I have read it. I have merch for it.
You have?
I only have one design for it. I need to go back and design more, but I loved One Dark Window, like the dark fairy tale. It was good. So good. So good.
If you're looking for like a cozy autumn gothic read, read it. So good.
Yes.
So good.
So good.
Yeah.
I'm starting Assistant to the Villain. I started it last night. I've heard it's like fun and light.
Oh, I want to read Apprentice to the Villain. I'm trying to get my book club to read it, but
did you read Assistant to the Villain yet?
I did last year.
You liked it?
I did.
Okay.
Now, you have to go in expecting like a campy, like The Office fantasy vibe.
Yes.
Like
that is what I've heard.
Any negative reviews I've seen, it's more like, okay, I don't think you got the point of what this was supposed to be, you know?
Okay. I have no idea what it's about. Like going in blind, I didn't read the blurb or anything.
Oh, I don't tell you what it's about, but I do think it's like supposed to be fun, like a little bit dark, but a little bit fun, and it's supposed to be funny. It's supposed
I feel
to
like
be
that's
funny.
What I need. After Quicksilver, I'm still listening to Spark of the Everflame. Those are like very a lot. You know what I mean? I just need something that's like boppy.
Honestly, I feel like this will be that. I really enjoyed it. It was phenomenal.
I saw the author on Instagram. That's what made me want to read it, actually, is she made this video that was hilarious about just like her process. And I was like, I like you and I'm fangirling you and I want to read your book.
That's why I started reading it. I found her on Instagram, and this was like before Assistant to the Villain released, and she was just talking about her book and how she got here. And I'm like, that's pretty freaking awesome. And like, I want to do that one day, probably in the very far future at this point, because life just keeps throwing stuff in my way.
Random side note. I realize we're just continuing on, but so my friend and I, my best friend, like in real life, she's a huge reader. Like she reads so much. She reads like a book a day, but we have this thing where we like have a fantasy of writing a novel, right? I have literally never written a word in my life. I have no background on writing, but in my head, I'm like, I'm going to do it. But one, I don't know how to write. And two, I want to be that person that all of the tropes are going to be in my book. Like it's going to be too chaotic. So I can't. Like I want it to be magic, but I also want it to be like carnival, and I also want it to be vampire. Like it would be, I can't do it because it's too chaotic. So we'll see.
You know,
but I feel like that's kind of normal as a reader. You're like, I want to do this. I want to like create a world, but it's so much harder than it looks, I'm sure. It
is. Well, like writing is, but it also is something like you just have to like dive in. But I will say this. Do you ever read Trial of the Sun Queen by chance?
I've heard about it.
Yeah. Nisha Tooley, she's a best-selling author. She came on my podcast and we were talking. And so if you've been following me on Bookstagram for a while, you know, like I really talked about like writing a book, and I drafted a whole first outline, not an outline, a rough draft. And honestly, life got in the way. I'll give you guys more information like down the road, but it's just really hard with little kids to write a damn book. I'll be very, very honest with you. It was hard on my marriage because it's just, you're always like robbing Peter to pay Paul. Like time comes from somewhere. And I couldn't just constantly be taking time away, and it just wasn't working. And so I was talking to her and she's like, I didn't even start writing till my kids were like older, like 5 and up, because I just didn't have the time.
Right.
I couldn't have done anything that you're doing before like my kids got older. And so it just kind of like was nice to feel seen, but also
Yeah.
I was hit with this overwhelming feeling of, oh my God, sometimes like it's just not the right time, and it doesn't mean it never will be, but like it's okay to not do everything you want to do or feel like you're capable of right now.
Exactly. And I've learned that recently too. Like, talk to my therapist about it, because I am someone who wants to do everything all at once. Like, it's just this, well, it's mostly with my shop. It's like this entrepreneurial addiction where I cannot, if I have an idea, I feel like I need to do it right now or else I'm losing out. And it becomes, like you said, you're robbing all of your time. You know, I'm not working out. I'm not cooking. I'm not eating healthy because I'm like, oh my gosh, if I don't do this now, I'm never going to get the chance because I'm 32. It's like, I'm 32. I have so much time. You know, it's just like
You do.
that perspective shift of like, I don't have to do all this right now. Like, it's going to be fine, you know? So I feel you. It's like, but it's such a shift of like, there's plenty of time and you need to enjoy the time with your family and see the sun every once in a while, you know? Like, you can't just be all consumed in this world.
It's so true. And wow, no, that like hit me like deep, because it's just like, I got so wrapped up last year in Bookstagram and writing and reading, and I almost didn't create space for like anything else for a minute. And it was hard to find balance. And now that I'm finding balance, I will say my numbers don't look the same, you know, and
but you probably feel better.
I feel better. And I feel like the interactions I do have now, like, are quality interactions, right? And the relationships I form are quality relationships. Like, most of my support system, like socially, is on the internet, is on Bookstagram with like
me too,
people I haven't met, like, right, like in real life. But and so like that's like the important thing to me at this point. It's that Bookstagram, I lost the plot for a minute. I'll be very honest. I was like, well, I got to use this and I got to write a book and I have to keep doing more. And it's like, or just like really enjoy it.
Right. And just like, have these conversations where we like are obsessed with a book and need to talk to somebody about it. And now we have the platform too. Like, how fun is that?
Right. Well, and then there was this, I've been seeing so many like deep dive podcasts pop up.
Yes.
And how fun. I'm not going to comment too much on that, but there was a minute I was like, oh, is that like how you have to do a bookish podcast, right? Like, do I have to be doing deep dives, right? And doing lots of research. And Fantasy Fangirls does an amazing job. Like,
100%.
They are pretty much like, to me, like the framework for if that's the podcast you're doing, like they do it so well.
Yes, agreed.
I also very quickly realized I'm not capable of that. So I was like, well, what can I do? It's like, well, like I could just talk to people about books and like feel like you're like at a friend's book club, or you're just chatting with a friend about a book, and then maybe life, and then you just kind of feel like a warm hug at the end, you know?
Exactly. And I love this. I mean, even before we started recording, you were like, this is going to be casual, chill, like, you know, I get so worked up about things always. That's just my personality. But then it's like, oh, this is like a friendship chat. Like, this is us getting to sit down and talk about these authors that we love. And I think it's so fun and special versus me being even more stressed than I normally am. Like, I love coming on and chatting, and I will chat about any book that you want to read with me.
I know you're like, I was like, what about this book? You're like, yeah, sure. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
But at the same time, it's just like, I do get asked that. Like, someone asked me in my real life, not on the internet, like, what is your podcast? And I was like, oh my God, what is it? I don't even know. And then I landed on, I just wanted to feel like you're talking with a friend about a book. I don't want to feel like it's something that's unapproachable or.
Yeah, it's very casual.
Yeah, my brain's fried. So any thoughts I'm coming up with?
It's Sunday. We got to prep for the week. We can't be using all our emotional energy.
Yeah. And then truthfully, having a social life outside of being a mom is really hard. And so my podcast kind of became my quasi social life. It's like carving out an hour.
It's like you don't have to drive. You don't have to spend time driving. It's like very low key.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan.
I get to hang out and talk about books with like my bookish friends. Like, is there really anything better? I don't think so. It's amazing. Well, honestly, Erin, thank you so much for coming on here. Like, I just adore you and I love talking to you. Anytime you want to come and chat about any book, like, you are always welcome.
Of course. I love this. I love the book. I love chatting with you and just getting to catch up. And I'll let you know when we have like a next book that aligns and we can do this again because it's so
Anytime.
fun.
It's so fun. Like, I have such a blast every time we chat, even in like our DMs. Like, you're just such a awesome support person. I love you so much. You're the best.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. I love this. And I hope you have a good week. I know it's Sunday today, and I hope you have like a very balanced week and just take some time for yourself.
I'm working on it. Balance is like my new mantra, like trying to find balance.
I'll
always
be with you on that.
Yes. And thank you all for listening. We are so happy that you've endured 49 minutes of our chaotic book chat. I hope you had as much fun as we did. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment, and we will chat with you all soon. Have a great day, guys.